was a transformational conference for the party, not just in size and the multinational character of it, and the fact that it was a majority youth, you know. But it was also a clear sign that not only are young revolutionaries coming into the party, but they're taking over the party. And this is something that we have been wanting and working toward, and it's uneven. Some branches are more ahead than others. But that notwithstanding, it's an undeniable phenomena that is in motion. I hope I'm not violating party internal, norms to say that at a leadership meeting that we had on the Sunday morning before we started the open conference, one of the things that we agreed to, that we voted on in the leadership, was that the appropriate bodies would be set up to completely reorganize the party from top to bottom, to facilitate two things. One would be recruitment, and two would be to enable the young, fabulous, serious, militant revolutionaries who have come into the party and demonstrated such leadership and such promise, to facilitate them rising to the leadership, and to work in every way possible to make that successful. Brenda also raised the meeting last night. It was just incredible. I mean, it's a sign of the rebellion against the elections, which you've read about. Just incredible. I mean, this room was full last night at the People's Power Assembly meeting. No doubt, and we've had some pretty large meetings here. We've had some large party meetings. We had some large IWD day meetings. We had to shoehorn people, but this was the largest. I hope not to speak too long. I mean, I don't know if I'll get back to it, but let me just say this about the PPA meeting. While mass action was very much on the agenda, and maybe we'll touch on that later, January 20th, actually the PPA is calling an action on December 3rd, which is the International Day in support of people with disabilities, but also the day that the Klan is supposed to be marching in North Carolina. Okay. We're going to be calling a protest against white supremacy, and there'll be more about that. And also there's January 20th, which I'm sure we'll say a little bit more. But I want to make a few points about the working class and the labor movement and what the elections indicate to us. And this is part of a continuing discussion. It's part of the discussion that we had at the conference. But it's not exhausted at all. There's so much that's going to happen that we're going to need to respond to. This is really a defining moment for the organized labor movement everywhere, including, if not most especially, in this country. This election demonstrated painfully just how bad and dangerous for the working class it is for the leadership of the labor movement to be so moderate, to be so stagnant, to be so tied to one of the bourgeois parties, to the point where they're blind, deaf and dumb to what's happening below. There was a rebellion in both capitalist parties during the 2016 election. We know what happened with the Republican Party. The rebellion won, and racists and neo-fascist elements gained ascendance. But there was also a rebellion in the Democratic Party. We comment on that with this caveat: we're not for the Democratic Party. We think the Democratic Party is a thoroughly bourgeois party and cannot, under any circumstances in the long term, represent the interests of the workers and the oppressed of this country, but only in incremental and circumstantial, temporary ways, be the least bit helpful. However, their rebellion did not end the same way that the rebellion in the Republican Party ended. And the labor movement has to take this up because it's thrown them into a crisis. And when they start lamenting the fact that, whatever Supreme Court judges that Trump is going to, appoint, they're going to be like misogynists on steroids and try to overdo Roe v. Wade unless there's a big fight back, and on every other thing, anti-labor, anti-workers' rights, just anti-everything that's progressive and humane. See, they can only blame themselves for this, comrades. Hopefully it's a wake-up, it's an educational thing. It's not, we're not asking people to, beat themselves up. But they had a choice. Just like that explosion inside the Republican Party. They had a choice. They could support a neoliberal, a representative of the capitalist political establishment from the point of view of wars abroad and wars at home. A neoliberal, a benefactor of all of the wealth that neoliberalism has concentrated. They could have learned the lesson of Brexit, but they didn't. They went along with that. They could have supported Sanders. That might have had some political problems for those of us who are revolutionary communists. But a Sanders victory would have been a step forward with all of its problems and actually inspired the working class to fight harder. And it was within reach. And there are a lot of people to blame, but the organizations of the working class, first and foremost, in our view, have to take this up. It should be a sign to all of those who are progressive and militant and have a different perspective than being tied to the Democratic Party. It should be a green light for them to really accelerate their struggle against leadership in the labor movement, so that the labor movement, all of it, can begin a period of being revolutionized in order to prepare itself to fight for the future. This was a warning, and the warning says, stop relying on the Democrats, stop relying on the neoliberals, stop relying on the globalists. It's a losing proposition. You're tying yourself to a big rock that's dragging you under the waters. You and everybody else, our whole class, if we allow it to happen. Think bolder, be in touch with all of your class, unite them and represent them in a growing revolutionary struggle that is not only local and national, but worldwide in context. I shouldn't say these, that sounds pejorative. Every trade union militant should be asking themselves, how is it that the forces in the Republican Party, the racists, the neo-fascists, how is it that they got it right and we didn't? How is it that they understood that there was this explosion, this potential explosion against what has happened, not only since the financial crisis of 7 or 8 years ago, but way, way before then, when they started closing the plants in the Rust Belt states. And there was the downsizing of the wages and the busting of the unions. How come we did not get that right? How come the reactionaries got it right and used it to scapegoat the most oppressed? See, we've got to do away with this incremental, oh gee, we can get a little bit from this bourgeois politician, we can get a little bit of that politician. We've got to represent our class. And the sooner the better, because there's a lot to lose. It is absurd, twisted, bizarre, almost beyond belief that Trump and his most ardent supporters were able to create some ridiculous fantasy paradigm. Who are we fighting? We're fighting the elites, the Clintons, the rich, the globalists, the neoliberals, Wall Street. And you know who they're allied with? Somehow in this fantasy world, they're allied with black and brown people, women, LGBTQ people, Muslims, immigrants of all people, against the workers. See? And it's us, the workers, against them and against the world. It's a ridiculous fantasy, but it's what happens when there's a dearth of leadership in the working class movement. He did not win a big landslide election. Literally a few 100,000 votes one way or the other would have given it to the Democrats. As we all know, they won the popular vote. And that's not a big issue for us. A lot of the liberals are saying, well, let's do away with the Electoral College. That I don't know if there's a basis for a revolutionary struggle in that. But we will say this. If we know a little bit of a history, we know that the Electoral College was designed to preserve the political strength of the slaveocracy.
Right.
It was. And to make sure that, these growing mass, multinational, proletarian centers, not exclusively, but particularly on the coast, like California and New York, it was designed to weaken them as against certain regions of the country that for historical reasons tended to be whiter and more reactionary. So it is anti-democratic. And maybe there'll be a time to get to that, but I'm not sure that fighting against the Electoral College is the first thing on our agenda. We've got other things to do, and we'll get to that. The sooner the better. Finally, the message is clear for a workers' party. We have to globalize our class. From now on, we have to fight to make sure there's no confusion about the constituents of our class. It is the Muslims. It is women. It is LGBTQ. It is immigrants. It is the youth. And not this strange, unimaginable way that the Trump supporters were able to get away with. It's up to us to do that. I guess I want to end by talking a little bit about January 20th. It's going to be enormous. It seems to us from the response that we've gotten and from what we've heard, the challenge won't be getting people to come. The challenge will be both the logistical challenge of getting people from all over the country to Washington, D.C., somehow early January 20th, or maybe January 19th. And also the struggle inside Washington on January 20th. Not to be suppressed and chastened by the state, which will try to minimize or come down or in some way hurt our influence and make it a day for Trump supporters, which we can only imagine will be coming out in force. We know this answer, which usually has a permit for some place on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is where the inauguration parade marches down. Usually, for a long time now, Freedom Plaza which is a plaza right there on Pennsylvania Avenue, a block and a half away from the White House. They've been denied a permit so far. And they're having a legal battle now. I don't know the latest. But the basis upon which the state is denying them the permit is to say, we're not going to give you anything where you can have your crowd here with a sound permit. There's lots of Trump supporters coming. And they have equal rights. You know. So I don't know if that'll change, but it gives you an idea that in addition to getting everybody who wants to be there, and it could be the largest demonstration in history coming to D.C. It could be another 1 million person, mobilization. There's also the question of what we'll do there, And there's so many parts of it. I mean, one of the things we know is that the following day, Saturday, January 21st, there's a 1 Million Women's March. Whatever happens on Friday. This idea of a general strike, actually a global general strike, on Friday, January 20th, has been put out. I am not sure who called it. In some ways, I think it's like, the call for occupying Wall Street 5 years ago, that gave rise to the Occupy Wall Street movement. I'm not sure that it was we're not sure that it was an organized force that did it, but it was just something that was raised in social media, and it sounded right, and it tended to resonate. And certainly, as important as it is to get as many people to D.C. on January 20th as possible, it's a Friday, there'll be a lot of people who can't go. So it seems to be a smart thing for there to be local activities, whatever they're called. I saw it on one Facebook page called a global strike. For everything that we know, I can only speculate that even the most successful global general strike would be symbolic, and that workers by the tens of millions would not be walking off their jobs in this country, in Africa, and Asia, in the Middle East, in Europe, wherever. Although, wow, surprising things are happening that weren't on our radar screen. But it interests me, this call for a global general strike. One, because it's an appeal to, it's a class appeal. At least that's the way I interpret it. I don't know whether the people who put it out, see it that way. And it's a challenge to do something not merely on a local or national level, but on a global level. And more, even if it's not possible for whatever reasons, some of us better be thinking about the extent to which there can be global class actions against globalized capitalism at this time. Because it's one of the ways, not the only way, but it's one of the ways you can deepen the sense that we are a global class and that geography doesn't matter. Boundaries, national boundaries, don't matter as much as they used to. And the more we act like a global class, the harder it is for the racists and the reactionaries to divide us. So we'll see. But short of that, this office is going to be an organizing center, a vigorous, active, dynamic organizing center for the January 20th demonstration. There's something important happening tomorrow. It's happening on Saturday. I think ANSYS called for a march from El Barrio to the Bronx. And those of us who can check that out will be there. But I think that's only, and that might be interesting because it seems like that's more likely to be led by the oppressed. One of the apprehensions that a lot of black and brown people and trans and queer people have about some of the demonstrations that have taken place, and they're progressive. This is a small thing, but it's important, is that those demonstrations have been led and occupied by people who were hopeful. At least this is the presumption, and I think there's some truth to it. People that were hopeful that the Democrats would win. And so, this is a generalization. There are exceptions like Portland, like some other places that people can point to. At these demonstrations, there's been a lot of policing of the tone. You know, it's been, love trumps hate. You know, anybody who wants to say fuck the police, or something more radical, it's been a struggle. It's one of the reasons why the PPA decided to call and made it public a demonstration on December 3rd. Just so they could have a demonstration that would have different politics, that would be anti both parties, and that would fully embrace the oppressed who are the most targeted. After having this campaign, our election campaign, which was in no small measure, responsible for the spectacular turnout at the conference. I mean, there were other things, the great work that our comrades in the South are doing, the Charlotte Rebellion, which was a victory, etc. But there's no doubt that our election campaign was a big factor. And it's obvious, this, you don't have to be like a brain surgeon, If we in this period fail to act in the name of the party, and even boldly to call things, first and foremost meetings, but also other things, in the name of Workers' World Party, then we will be doing ourselves and the working class a big disservice, I think. Whatever else is going on, PPA, Women's Fight Back Network, I mean, the youth may come up with another group. Hopefully there'll be a youth group of the party, but they'll figure that out. But if we've learned anything, it's when some of the lessons are, we're still wrapping our heads around. I'm of the opinion that none of us should walk away, and I don't think anybody is, thinking that we have had an exhaustive analysis of what the F just happened, and all the parts of that. We'll be analyzing this, hopefully, because if we weren't, it means somebody turned the switch off upstairs, which is not a good idea. We'll be analyzing this and, what Trump does week by week. As a matter of fact, this will be a week-to-week kind of phenomena for the party. This is a new era, a new phase that represents something, that represents both a danger but also an opportunity. But just getting back to the party, we have to do more in the name of the party. Just because the damn election is over, it doesn't mean that the party is the paper. Although getting the paper out is great, we have to do that, everything's on the table, including party campaigns, election campaigns, and other types of campaigns. And it will take nothing away from the mass work. It is a very necessary adjunct to whatever mass work is going on, and in whatever name that mass work is being organized. I mean, we may be part of an anti-fascist front, somehow in my mind, and put aside the definition of this period. I don't even want to go there. But, and we'll be there, we'll be the most loyal, energetic, with the youth and a multi-generational thing. But that still is an unacceptable argument not to do more boldly in the name of Workers' World Party. I mean, just the name is an answer to so much. We are organizing in the name of the working class, Workers' World Party. We are organizing in the name of all workers, World Party. I mean, just that is like, huge in terms of countering reaction.